Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Gerdes. I'm Gerdes Bhargav Patel, your host for Law Chat, and I am so excited for you to join us today. I have some amazing guests on Law Chat, and they're here to share their experiences and entrepreneurial journey with us, and through their storytelling, mentorship with us, because that is the whole point. We are all entrepreneurs and we're all on a journey, and learning from one another is the best way for us to move forward in our journey as well. And I have amazing guests who are so willing and ready to share their stories with us, their challenges and their victories and their achievements, and also their mindset. I just can't wait to share that with you, and I also just can't wait to have that conversation with them. It's such a privilege to have each and every one of them here with us today, and also it's such a privilege to have you listening in and tuning in. So let's dive in to Law Chat with Gerdes.
Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Gerdes. Have you ever struggled with being authentic when you walk to the table for negotiation, or when you're even talking to some business potential, or even on the gram? I know I have. And today we have a guest, Erika Gerdes. She's an authenticity coach. She's an advocate, speaker, and a founder of The Art of Undoing. I have read about her journey. She shares it very openly on her website, and it speaks volumes about how important being authentic is, and also it shows so much triumph. And I'm so excited for her to be here today and share her journey with us, and also teach us some, give us some lessons and some wisdom on how to handle our own issues that what we might be having. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Erika.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. I mean, I give a super brief description and intro to you. You have accomplished so much. And along with that, you have accomplished so much internally. I mean, yes, you've achieved all these other, degrees and achievements that you have of your own. But I really want to start off with is, how did it all start? Like, I know that you were working as a global business executive at Google also. So how did your journey begin? Where did the real journey start for you?
Well, I was born on an evening in Arkansas back in 1980. Let's see. I feel like there's sort of two parts of my life, and the pivot point occurred on July 15th of 2013 now.
13, yeah.
It was, yes, 2013. You know it. I don't even remember.
I know it.
Thank you. So basically, I lived my entire life as an overachieving perfectionist people pleaser, and I was entirely focused on achievement and collecting gold stars and doing everything I thought I should do and becoming the person I thought I should be, and completely focused and motivated by all of those people that were telling me I was doing a good job. And while I was very, very focused on the achievement, I always was afraid that I was like one step ahead of failure. I always had this deep, empty, gnawing feeling that something just wasn't right. And no matter what I tried, and no matter what tips and tricks I tried to implement in my life, nothing really ever changed that feeling. And when my second daughter was born, at 2 weeks old, we discovered that she had a tumor on her spinal cord. And that was so far outside of any plan I had ever created for my life, because pretty much everything up to that point was based on some plan or some idea that I had in my life of how things should look. And that moment when I realized I have to throw out the plan book, like that's not going to work. This was so far off of that. And so at 3 months old, she had spinal neurosurgery, and it was a 7-hour procedure. And as I sat in the hospital with her that night, as she, was recovering, I literally had a thought that changed my life. I was sitting there in the dark, listening to her breathing through, in the machines, and the kids that were in the pediatric ICU that were crying. And it was just this overwhelming feeling of powerlessness, and realizing there are kids in this hospital who may never leave. And here I am in my almost mid-30s, and I have so much privilege and so many things going for me. What am I waiting for? Mm-hmm. When am I waiting for my life to get better when these kids may never have that chance? Mm-hmm. And the thought that actually changed my life was, I have one life to live. There are no second chances, no do-overs. I get one go round at this life.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I spend one more minute waiting to be happy?
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, I stopped waiting.
Yeah.
And my life has fundamentally changed. So that's the before and after point.
Yeah. That's so powerful, especially the circumstances that brought you, that you came out of at that time. But prior to that, also, prior to that pivotal moment of your life, were you working at Google at that time, or were you working somewhere else at that time?
I worked at Google for 12 years. So I worked there both before and after. I started back in 2006 and then I
Mm-hmm.
left in the beginning of 2019. So I say I grew up there because I was there for 12 years, which is in the US, K through 12. And I
Yeah.
feel like I got a better education there than I did for any of the rest.
I've heard it's a great company to work for, so I'm pretty sure you probably had a really great experience there. Is that right?
Oh my gosh. I love Google and I still
Yeah.
do. Like you'll hear me as I talk. I have never been able to get it out of my language. I still say we. And so the way I consider it is I have graduated from there. And so it's my
Mm-hmm.
alma mater. And
Mm-hmm.
so just like, you probably talk about your alma mater from college
Right.
as we, I will always talk about Google as we, no matter how far gone I am.
Wow, that's an incredible testament to their corporate culture there too, then. If you're like, if you're still considering yourself part of it, and also just so gracious about how much you love it. So,
It's honestly one of the greatest. Well, I consider all my experiences, both the good and the bad, to
right.
be, or the good and the hard, I guess it's not bad,
Yeah.
to be blessings and gifts.
Yeah.
And Google was truly such an amazing organization to grow up in. And they do have an amazing corporate culture. The part that was the most outstanding about working for Google was actually to be around these amazing people.
Mm-hmm.
And, they say you don't leave organizations, you leave your bosses. The manager that I did ultimately end up leaving is one of my best friends now. So I didn't leave because I didn't love her or my job or the company. I left because I knew there was something greater for me to be doing.
Exactly.
So,
So
yeah.
while you were there, were those feelings stirring inside of you, or was it just that moment in the hospital that was just a catalyst for you?
I think it's yes, and actually,
Mm-hmm.
both are true. When I started at Google, so it was, if think back to the time, for those of us who are old enough, this was 2006. Like the internet was still pretty new at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, there were fewer than 10,000 employees in the company, and I actually got my job. It was the only place I wanted to work. I moved from Wisconsin, where I had done my graduate degree, to California following my boyfriend. And I decided before I even got to California that the only place I wanted to work was Google. But I also decided that I would never be able to get a job there because I had only gone to state schools. I had
Oh,
communication degrees. I didn't have any degrees or any classes or training in engineering or marketing or advertising or even business. I'm not quite sure what I thought I was going to do with my communication degrees, but anyway, so I didn't actually even apply to Google because I knew I wasn't going to get in. And
oh,
about 4 months after I was in California and applying to everything that I thought I could get a job at and didn't get a single call back, I finally started applying to anonymous Craigslist ads. Definitely not one of those things I recommend for people to do, especially now. But at the time, it was less risky. And the job that I ultimately got a call back for was an anonymous internet powerhouse. And, again, 2006, it could have been 3 people in a garage. Like I really had no idea. And I didn't know what
right.
digital advertising was. And when they called, they said, this is a job for Google. And I thought it was like a contractor job.
Yeah.
And they said, no, you would be a Google employee. This is a job you would work at Google. And even despite that, like even the fact that fate clearly had different plans than I had for myself and believed in me more than I believed in myself, even then, when I started the job, I literally didn't even listen to the vesting schedule, like the presentation on the first day, because I thought, oh, I'm not even going to be here for 4 years.
Oh my.
Yeah, I did, in fact, last longer than 4 years, clearly 3 times that. And, the reason that as I've tracked back to why that is, it's because I think I always knew that I wanted something else, but I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that it was possible for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
my dream was always to help people. I chose to get an organizational communication master's degree because I thought that would be a closer road to getting more money. But what I really wanted to do was to help people and to be able to, inspire people to think about and make change in their lives. And it took me going through the hardships that I went through to realize I have to honor that truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had always been there, but it took me believing in myself to actually believe that it was possible to go after it.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I think that's so important and really interesting, actually, because, as you just said, fate proved you wrong a couple of times, and it believed in you more than, right? And it believed in you more than you believed in yourself. And I know a lot of people, there's a lot of this affirmations, which I totally believe in as well. And that, the universe will give it to you if you throw it out there type situation. But that wasn't really what was going through your mind back when you first started Google. What was going through your mind is, I'm not going to get it. Boom, you got it. I'm not going to be here longer. And 12 years later, you're still there and you're crushing it. And so tell me though, when was that limiting belief of your own that I'm not good enough or I can't do this? When did that start changing for you? And then how did it change?
That's such a good question. It is the thing that I still but I still work through every single day. So I love the way you phrase the question, not with the assumption that it's now gone, because it's not. And I think it really started changing when I finally realized I can't wait for my life to change. I have to change. Mm-hmm. And that happened after the hospital experience with my daughter. And because really what it did was it helped me shift the power dynamic that I believed needed to be true in order to have the life I wanted. Because for most of my life, I was looking to the outside for things to change in order for me to feel better in my life, for me to fit into my life. Mm-hmm. And when I stopped looking to the outside and I stopped expecting situations or people or experiences to change in order for me to feel better and started realizing I'm the one who has to change, then that's when I started going to a deeper level and really getting really clear on why I wasn't changing and what those limiting beliefs were and how they were holding me back. So I call what I teach now the art of undoing, because it's really about undoing the power of the unconscious stuff that's holding us back, those limiting beliefs. And now what I realize, and I didn't at the time, is that so many of us believe that, like, for instance, when I was at Google and was leaving, so many people were like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you unlocking the golden handcuffs and leaving your corporate job? And I think there are a lot of us, no matter where you work, if it's giving you a nice lifestyle and you want something more, most of us feel that there's that sort of golden handcuffs attached. What I know now that I did not know until much more recently is that the golden handcuffs are not in our job. They're not in our lifestyle. They're our identity. And so when we can start to get honest with ourselves about how our identity, who we think we should be, who we believe ourselves to be, and who we cannot be, how those things are holding us back, then it opens us up to living in full range and expanding our possibility and our impact.
Wow, that was deep and mind-blowing at the same time, and I'm still processing it.
It's a big one for sure.
I'm like, can I repeat that?
Yeah. I can say it again more slowly if you want.
Yes and no. What I want is actually to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. I know that you've also battled some pretty hard issues in life as well that I'd love for you to talk about and kind of go through that process and that journey as well, because I agree with you. Limiting beliefs they're fleeting sometimes. They could be a season sometimes. And they also can leave and then come in a different way. And, I agree with you. It's not something that you just get over overnight. It's something that happens, but you get stronger each time you overcome it. Each time you defeat one, you get stronger for the next one. I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com.
a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now, back to our awesome conversation.
I think it's so interesting how you just said that the golden handcuffs are our identity. And can we talk a little bit about that? What do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. Before I answer that, can I address something that you just said?
Yes.
So it's interesting. I agree that limiting beliefs they're fleeting in how they show up. And what I don't believe, I believe that our journey sort of helps us continue to go to higher levels or deeper levels, or whichever way you want to evolve. And it's usually around the same core issues. And so, for me, my journey will likely continue to be around this hang up of not enoughness and believing that achievement is related to my worth and that my identity is somehow attached to that. And, as soon as I think that it's gone, I know that's not true. So I think if we let ourselves believe that we have cleared something, I think that keeps us from what actually may be more true for us, which is this, just that we need to sort of graduate to another layer and get to another realization about what may be holding us back related to some deeply held belief. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's
okay.
Yeah.
So, and I say that because for instance, perfectionism is a thing that I struggle with. And what is true about perfectionism is it really helped me get to where I was, because I was so focused on being perfect. It meant that I got straight A's all the way through all of my studies. It meant that, kind of whatever, this sounds super narcissistic, but whatever I did, I was good at because I was only doing a few things. I would only do the things that I knew I was going to be good at, which meant that I was living in very narrow range. And so while it helped me get to Google potentially, it also held me back from a greater possibility and range in my life.
Right.
So, I thought that I had cleared that. I thought when I left Google, I was like, oh, I'm so brave. I've gotten through this. I've done all the work. And now I'm so good that I'm able to leave Google and go start my own thing in a completely different industry. But what was really true is that I was still in my comfort zone. And so as soon as I got out of my comfort zone, all of those old protective mechanisms that, kept me safe at various points in my life came back with a vengeance. So as soon as I left Google, oh my God, I needed everything I needed to show up perfectly. And I was so in my head about when I wasn't. And so what I would say is anytime we believe that we don't have limiting beliefs, it probably just means that we aren't pushing ourselves enough. Because as soon as we push ourselves out of our comfort zone, those limiting beliefs are going to come back because they are there to keep us safe, but they also keep us small. So what I believe is that we need to learn how to have fear without letting fear have us.
Okay. Love that.
And what I mean by that is so many people think that they need to wait till the time when the fear disappears to go take the action. But what is always going to be true is that the action will cause fear if it's a big enough action that is going to push you outside of your comfort zone. But you need to learn how to take that action in the fear with courage, as opposed to waiting until it no longer is there. And so what this really at the deepest level becomes is it's our ability to shift from reaction to intention. Most of our actions that we take and the thoughts that we think and the beliefs that we hold are reactions to fear. So we're reacting in ways unconsciously to keep ourselves safe. But when we can sit there and allow ourselves to feel the fear and say, okay, this is uncomfortable. And then we allow ourselves to shift into action from a place of intention. That is when we entirely change our lives.
That is so true. And I've actually just while you're talking and I'm thinking about my own life, I'm like, yes, that is absolutely true. And I love that. I think, the thing of taking that first step while you're fearful is very important. And it also makes you more bold and more courageous as you keep moving forward. And I think it's so true that the intention, if it's there, it becomes stronger then, and it overtakes that fear.
Yes. And I love
that.
I love what you're saying, because another thing I hear so often is, I need to wait till I'm more confident.
No.
But yeah, exactly. No, I mean,
No.
yes, it is great. It would be wonderful if we could like think our way to confidence, but that's not how it actually happens.
Confidence comes from action.
Exactly. We act our way to confidence.
Yeah. I mean, that's my number one thing. Like, if you are feeling a lack of confidence in something, that means you need to do something to get that confidence back. Whether that is educating yourself, or whether that is putting yourself in the lion's den and figuring it out, that you just have to do that. It's going to be terribly scary.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to mention something here, because this is something that I feel isn't discussed enough. And I think it's super, super important, because I make up that your audience is probably filled with a lot of super passionate high achievers who like to do big things in the world. And so I feel like that this is probably really relevant. Those of us who are, we tend to we like to go big or go home, right? So, there's like, if somebody else wasn't there to cheer us on, did it even happen? And right. So the challenge with high achievers is we like to achieve. And so as soon as we get an insight, as soon as we think, oh, here's a nugget of something, I can take this and I can run with it. Mm-hmm. What is true is that limiting beliefs are self-fulfilling. So, we create the world based on what we believe. So if there are places where, a new insight is like, oh, maybe this isn't true, maybe this limiting belief isn't true. But if we take a big action, we're much more likely to prove the limiting belief than to disprove it. So if you go straight into the lion's den and attempting to like kill the lion because you've now found this insight that the lion's not real, you may actually get mauled.
Okay.
So
I get that.
So what we're likely to do, like, if you ever had one of those situations where you're like, I'm going to go talk to this person and I'm going to tell them, whatever the truth is. And then you come out and you feel horrible about yourself, and and you're like, oh, that totally confirms why I'm never doing that again, ever, ever.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's because what we end up doing is actually proving the limiting belief to ourselves.
Okay, that's very interesting. But I see it. I get what you just said. Yeah. So how would you do it then if you were not? What is the alternative?
If you wanted to disprove it?
What do you do to disprove that?
Yeah. So the way I like to think of it is, imagine you are in a lit hallway, and in order to get out of the hallway, you have to go through a dark room. So if the only way to get through was to go through a dark room and you couldn't turn a light on and you couldn't use a flashlight, how would you do it?
Use my phone. I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. If you couldn't use your phone.
I don't know. Tell me how would.
No, seriously. If you had to go through the dark room, it's not actually a riddle. It's
okay. Okay. Say it again. If I had to go through the dark room, I can turn the light on.
Yeah. How would you do it?
I would just go with my hands out a little bit and make sure I'm not touching anything. I mean, make sure I'm not running into anything.
Okay. Would you run?
No, I would walk very slowly.
There you go. You just answered your own question.
Yeah.
So when we think about it, if we think, what would I actually do if I were walking into a dark room? We're usually going to go very slowly and very carefully, taking baby steps, because we don't want to step on a spider or a Lego or, whatever other random things are on the floor. And, because we're going slow enough, if we run into something, we don't hurt ourselves.
Right.
Because we're going slow enough that it's information. It's a data point that doesn't tell us run back to the hallway. Instead it says, just sidestep, just pivot slightly. And the more you do that, and the more steps you take, and the more that you don't run into something, and the more confidence we tend to build, right? And so we start taking bigger steps, and we start acclimating to the dark. And then after a while, the steps are bigger, and now we've gotten further into the room, or maybe even out of the room altogether.
Right.
So when we use that same approach to how do we want to disprove our beliefs, it's the exact same. It's, how can I take steps that are small enough that even if I run into something, it's not going to hurt.
That makes so much sense, actually. And I love that. It's instead of just running into it, into the the lion's den, as I had said earlier,
Yeah.
and getting mauled, because truly that is probably what might happen. But I love that. Take baby steps, go through it slowly, encourage yourself slowly with the baby steps that you're taking, and prove yourself wrong by taking those baby steps.
Prove the belief wrong.
Right.
Because what we tend to do is because we take these really big steps, we get whiplash. It's like, oh God, that really hurt when, because then we've left ourselves super exposed and vulnerable. And now anything that hurts, like it's, really, really deep inside. And so when we're taking small steps and we're using it to gather information, and all we're doing is sort of making pivots, now the desire isn't so much when we run into something to run straight back to the hallway where it's safe and lit, but rather simply to keep taking small steps and gathering more information.
That just makes so much sense. And I love that. I love that is such a practical tool also to get over your own personal limiting beliefs that can keep popping up also as you grow, as you stretch in life. Yes. So tell me, how did the concept of authenticity tie into, post Google, when you left Google, and how did that start tying into your life? And how did you realize that this is what I really want to hone into?
It was completely accidental, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I had no idea that that's what I was doing.
Oh.
So after I started getting honest with myself that I was the one who needed to change, because I was literally to the point I had become such a different person based on who I thought I should be, that I couldn't tell you what I liked, what I didn't like. I didn't have opinions of my own, and I didn't really know how to feel. So you asked earlier about some of the struggles I've had, and my struggles are minimal in comparison to a lot of people's. Like I very much feel like I come from a very blessed place with a lot of privilege, and I acknowledge that. And my struggles were, they caused a lot of fear and a lot of pain for me. And I think, where everybody's struggles are different, pain is pain and fear is fear.
Exactly.
And so I really believe that it's super important for us to acknowledge the fear and the pain and not compare what caused them, because the comparison does nobody any good. And I'm not in any way suggesting that you went in that way, but so many people don't. They're like, oh, my problems are nothing in comparison to somebody else's, so I shouldn't talk about it, which is also what I did for a long time. And I suffered from anorexia and bulimia, and like I hated myself and all kinds of things.
And all of that pain that you were going through, you experienced these challenges and pain, and through which you also, had your own, you had your own set of pain. And then that also influenced your health. It impacted mental and your physical health. And so around what time in your life was that happening? Was that before your daughter had gone to the hospital, or was it after your daughter had gone to the hospital?
I suffered from my deepest, I'd say, mental and physical health issues from the time I was in elementary school through college. And I kind of got a little bit better about it. And then, but I never could understand why I was having the problems. Like, why was it so hard for me to have a healthy relationship with food? And then ultimately, and this happened much later, have a healthy relationship with alcohol. And so the health issues were, and this is fascinating. I didn't actually realize this until much later. I believe that we all have what I now call canaries in the coal mine. So the idea, of course, if you're familiar with canary in the coal mine, canaries were used in coal mines when they would sing. The miners would know that they were okay. When they would stop singing, they would know that they needed to get out immediately because it indicated that there was a problem with the oxygen. So if we think of canaries in the coal mine as being a sign of something being okay or not, it is really wonderful that our bodies actually give us signs all the time that things are okay or they're not. And it's not to say that because the canary stopped singing, there's something wrong with the canary. The canary stopped singing because there's something else wrong deeper in the mind. And the same is true for us. And so, these various health issues I had, ultimately what I realized was they were canaries in the coal mine. for a deeper issue around my lack of authenticity and my identity and my insecurity that I wasn't facing, and my inability, literally my inability to feel. I started numbing myself from the time I was in 6th grade. And that is as a result of some really difficult, painful things that happened to me as a child. My parents getting divorced in a very, very, very traumatic way, and some stuff that happened before that. And I really realized that what's easier than dealing with it is to stop feeling. And so I threw myself into achievement, and I threw myself into numbing, and I threw myself into anything that kept me distracted from actually dealing with the pain. So I built these layers on top of myself by becoming who I thought I should be. And this is where identity comes from. This is what is so important to understand and so difficult to face. Our identities are shaped by the time we're about 7 to 10 years old. So the way that our identities are shaped is based on who we believe we should be in order to get the love and affection and attention from those people whose love, affection, and attention are dependent for our survival. And so because we need others to survive, we're going to show up in ways that make us more likely to survive. And after a while, so for my dad, I needed to be good at school. When I was smart, I got celebrated. For my mom, was when I was popular and when I was pretty. And so I leaned into those things. And after a while, after we do that enough, we start to unconsciously attach that to our worth and our identity. And then we protect it at all costs because it is literally attached to our survival.
Oh my gosh. It's just as a parent listening to that, you also kind of wonder, what am I saying or doing to maybe make my child think or believe that way? Unknowingly, sometimes even you might be saying and doing things without having that intention, but that seed is being planted unknowingly. And that is absolutely food for thought for me. I'm going to be thinking about that very intentionally, because it's true. Sometimes parents don't realize that they might be doing a certain thing. For them, you're achieving great grades and they're excited, they're happy, they want to celebrate you, but that might be translated differently in a child's mind.
So,
and I don't know about your experience, but I'm just saying
no, I was going to agree with everything you said. So and what I was actually going to say is I had a really powerful, in my work, I work with some one-on-one clients, and then I also speak and I write about this same topic. And I had a private one-on-one client just this last week, and it was our first session. And we went through the whole conversation, and we actually tracked back some patterns related to our identity and how they're showing up now, which is ultimately what we're doing. It's part of the art of undoing. At the end of the conversation, I said, what's your biggest takeaway? And she said, this isn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I was doing what I've been trained to do my whole life. And that right there is why it's called the art of undoing. Because we are unconsciously recreating and doing and reacting based on what we believed was necessary for our survival long ago. Again, totally unconsciously and unknowingly and unconsciously, we are recreating those patterns every single day in our lives until we're able to identify that issue. Right. We will keep recreating it unconsciously. And that's why change is so hard, because we keep trying to apply tips and tricks to the surface. But until we actually identify the real core issues, those anchors that are deep below the surface, change is only skin deep, so to speak.
Yeah, that's so true. And I want to talk a little bit more about the authentic. That word is such a key word these days. It's such a buzzword. Everybody uses it so much. I also sometimes feel a little shy using it because I'm like, I don't even know what it means sometimes. Like, what am I saying? And so, you're like, I want to be my authentic self, which is a great endeavor, but what does it mean? And so if you can actually first define what authentic means for us, and then also tell us how we can apply it in our lives, in our profession, professionally and in our personal lives.
I love this question. I guess here's where my communication degree came in handy, because what I realized is it doesn't actually matter what word we use, it's what the word means. And so I love that that's where you started. So I agree. It sounds like such a cliche term, and we throw it around all the time. But like, what do we mean by that? And be authentic. Like, what version? Like, what is that? How do I do that? Is this like another role I play? And that's the thing that I struggle
What version?
with. Yeah, like, and anytime we're asking ourselves those questions, like that's another layer. Like it really points to that's not who you truly are. So the way I think of authenticity is, so if we looked at the etymology of the term authenticity, the actual origin in Latin, I think it is to act in one's own authority, as in to be the author of our lives.
Love it.
So, if we think about it, if we think what role we're currently playing in our lives, for the most part, it's not the author. We're either the hero of our story, or we're the victim of our story, or in some cases, maybe even the villain. And when we realize that authenticity isn't about being doing something or playing a role, but rather being at choice in every moment of our lives, then that's when we take the power back. That moment in the hospital, when I stopped waiting for everybody else to change, that's when I was playing the victim. I was the victim. I was waiting for my world to improve in order for me to feel okay. When I finally said, I choose, I am at choice, that's where the authenticity began. And that's true for all of us. And it's not about these big, huge, pivotal moments. It's practice in every single moment of every single day.
Oh yeah, it is practice. I love that. I do think though, sometimes people have to go through a certain type of, I say trauma, because some things really have to shake you in order for you to change or see life in a different perspective. And I think for you was seeing your child in the hospital. I mean, I just can't even imagine all the pain and, all the emotions you must have gone through as a mom. That's just like hearing about it also would bring tears to your eyes. But it changed you for the better. It changed you in a way where you build yourself up more. And you became the author of your life, as how you say it. And so it's empowering yourself to make the choices you want to make because you want to make them.
Yes. And you asked for some practical steps. So I can actually tell you, because the other thing is I don't want people to think they need to wait for trauma in order to start making changes like that,
And that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
No, I know that's not what you meant. I knew.
But what happens is that sometimes we need to get kicked in our butt, and that's what happens. Because I do feel like you're right. Like as you were saying about the canaries in the mine, our bodies are telling us things, and it may not be the way our body is reacting. It's your intuition, your sixth sense that is sitting there talking to you in the fleeting moments of your life. Very fleeting, but it's a voice that's pretty loud enough, but something you don't always pay attention to because this may not be the best choice for you at the time because it's uncomfortable and it's a decision you have to make that really might hurt other people. But I do feel that those things do come up. And then finally, when you just ignored it all day long, that's when that trauma might happen. And I don't wish that upon anybody. I personally went through something in 2017 myself with my health. And that was my pivotal moment in life where I'm like, God's given me a second chance. I can't sit around and waste my life anymore. And finding your true voice. Like I always envisioned, and I still envision myself as this rising phoenix, gone through the ashes and then coming out as a new self. And so I feel like, yes, don't wait for that moment. And I love how you're saying, I can't wait for others to be happy. You can't. No one has that power to make you happy. It's in you.
Yes. And if we can't be happy now, we're not going to be happy. Like my belief for the majority of my life was my life is in the next thing. My life is just around the corner. The one that's actually right for me, the one where I fit into my life perfectly. And so, the corner might've been just around it was in the next destination was a city or a boyfriend or a job or whatever. And anytime we believe that our happiness, our truth, or anything that is actually real about us is somewhere out there, we're looking in the wrong place.
Yes. Preach it. Love it. So give me some practical steps. How can we really start intentionally moving towards a better version of ourselves, the more authentic version of ourselves?
So the foundation has to start with awareness, because what we can't see, we can't change. So we must be aware of it in order to be able to change it. And that's honestly, for a lot of people, that right there is very challenging, because, most of us, like, I use the metaphor of a closet, and most people are like, oh, I know that closet. And it's like, there's a closet somewhere where we don't dare even get close to it, much less open it, because if we open it, then we're afraid all the stuff is going to fall down on top of us and bury us alive.
Mm-hmm.
When we can't face it, though, we're putting so much energy into avoiding it, into distracting ourselves from it. And that really just dilutes our impact across all of our lives, because I know you asked about personal and professional lives. Like, most of us think we can compartmentalize, but we're really not. And so we're either, when we try to avoid facing the stuff that's happening in our lives and becoming aware of it, the pain is actually being spread across our entire lives. It's sort of like a broad sweep, or, across the canvas, because we think it's going to hurt too much if we look at it in the face. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're having to numb yourself with alcohol or Netflix or ice cream or work or whatever, then it's a lot of pain already, and you're not really living. Mm-hmm. So my first encouragement is really bring awareness. Like, what is the stuff I'm avoiding? What is the stuff I'm distracting myself from looking at? Mm-hmm. People come to me. I've had so many people who come to me and they say, I feel like I need a different job. 30 minutes into the conversation, they realize it's a problem with their marriage. And we have to really get honest with ourselves. What is it I'm not facing? But awareness doesn't even have to start there. It's literally bringing awareness to, how do I feel in any one moment? Mm-hmm. Feelings are about actually feeling. But again, most of us, especially those of us who are very proud of our brains and where our brains have taken us in our world, in our lives, myself included, don't even realize there's a body attached to them. So we literally start there, because authenticity is a feeling practice. One of the reasons that we keep ourselves from being authentic is because we're so stuck in our heads because of the little stories that are in there. And those are all of I call them fear stories, those limiting beliefs. Feeling actually is the key to getting in touch with what is true for us, truth with a capital T. And it's also what enables us to actually keep ourselves from reacting. Because if you think about it, when we react from a place of fear response happens in our body before our executive functioning of our brains actually catches up. So we're already riled up before we even realize what's happened, and so we're down, the train's left the station. If we are more in touch with our bodies, we can actually recognize when that stuff is happening before we take action on it. Mm-hmm. And so the awareness again starts with what am I feeling in any moment? What are my values? If you don't know your values, really start there. Self-care is super important. There, a few of those things around awareness, they're just very, very critical. But then you move into these, I call them the 3 A's. And these you can apply in any moment to help you begin to practice more authenticity. So the first A is ask. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the story I'm telling myself? What's going on here? And there are so many ways that you can apply ask, but let's focus on ourselves because we're talking about authenticity. So that's, a me thing. Mm-hmm. So what is true is that as human beings, you mentioned storytelling earlier, as human beings, we're telling ourselves stories all the time. It is literally how we make meaning of our world. And most of the time we're inserting a lot of ideas and beliefs out and believing them as fact. Mm-hmm, and so it's kind of like Mad Libs inside of our head all the time. We have a couple of facts and then we insert all of those lines with beliefs that we have, right? So right. I get a piece of feedback, and so I'll use a real example. So I'm in the process of finalizing my first book right now. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And so some of my deepest fears are failure, mediocrity, and narcissism. Nothing says face those fears straight in the face like writing your first book, especially when it's mostly about yourself. So I had a meeting recently with a publisher, And she was, as I now know is part of the process, giving me a lot of feedback. And so as she's giving me the feedback, I started crying because I was super appreciative of the feedback, but like it hurts. It hurts to get feedback. You don't want your creative baby to be told it's ugly. Here's the thing. So she's giving me feedback and she's saying, I really think that we need to build out more of these stories. That's the fact. Inside my head, the story I was telling myself is, I'm not good enough. If I were better writer, she wouldn't have to be giving me this feedback. Right. So like, imagine we're doing this all day, every single day. It's not the fact, it's the story I'm telling myself. I'm not good enough. I should be a better writer. What's wrong with me? She thinks I suck. She said none of those things.
Right. It's the assumptions in our brain that are just.
Exactly. The assumptions. And so we have to ask, what is the story I'm telling myself? Because it's always, what does it imply about me? And it always implies something bad that we then need to protect ourselves from. And so if what I did in that case is I immediately started reacting and protecting myself, I'm going to be, reacting from a fear story inside of my head. So ask is the first step. What is the story I'm telling myself? The second is accept. This is the one most of us miss, especially high achievers who are used to doing something immediately. As soon as we see a story inside, we immediately want to launch into going to do something. But again, that's going to mostly be reactive. So we have to actually give ourselves a little bit of space to accept what's coming up. Like in that moment, okay, this hurts. It kind of hits the ego a little bit to hear that my creative baby's maybe not beautiful. And because what we mostly do as soon as we recognize those stories is we say, oh my God, here it is again. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just get through this? I'm such an idiot. You know what I mean? And we just spiral down even further. We blame and shame ourselves for having a human experience or tripping and falling when we recognize that we should have done better, quote unquote. So when we allow ourselves to just accept what's happening, what's coming up, that actually neutralizes the emotion. Because we allow ourselves to feel and sort of let it go, process it. If we don't process it, it sits inside of our body and that's where it starts to manifest itself in physical form. And then we act. So the third A in that, so the first was ask, the second was accept, and the third is act. Act from a place of intention. Because now we've given ourselves that little bit of a pause, that little bit of space, and now we can say, what do I really want to do here? If it's not that I want to defend myself from the story I believe, and instead it's how do I want to act with intention? And again, baby steps, start small. I don't want to prove that I suck. I want to prove that I don't. Prove to myself.
Yeah. That is so brilliant. All of that. I mean, I can see even just before we started, I was having all of the Zoom issue and, I think I kind of displayed all of that, right? I'm in my act, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope she's not thinking this. I hope she's not thinking this. And then with the accept, it's I'm having a hard time accepting the fact that Zoom is just not working right now. And rather than just be it's okay, tech happens. It's all good.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And thankfully you were so calm and you were, you literally helped me figure this issue out also. But it was, I completely can absolutely apply everything you just said to my little experience right before getting on this call with you. So
can we do something really fast? Do you mind to play? It might be a little vulnerable.
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So what makes this especially impactful, and I'm so glad it was already useful, and to even go to a deeper level. So if that was sort of the first level of the story you were telling yourself is what is she going to think? What does that imply about you?
What you're thinking, what does that imply about me? Oh, that I'm not professional enough, or that I'm not, I think that would be my number one thing, that I don't feel like I'm professional enough. And
what does that imply about you if you're not professional enough?
That I'm not good enough, that I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not a good podcaster. I'm not a good lawyer. I feel I'm not a good business owner. I mean, literally it brings you to your knees. Ultimately it goes to that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for being vulnerable, because that's exactly it. we may hear the surface level
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, she's gonna, she might think I'm whatever. But what we actually believe, the
Mm-hmm.
theme of those stories is I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I sure as heck better not let her see that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to protect myself. And the way that we protect ourselves, they're usually one of three ways. Self-protection tends to show up either as, I call it shutting it down, which is isolating ourselves. So we get further away, because if I'm further away from you, you can't see the cracks in my facade where I'm not good enough. The other is turning it up. This is my forte. This is, I'm dancing for my dinner. If I'm moving and I'm shifting and I'm constantly doing things, I'm moving so much you can't see the cracks in my facade.
Yeah.
And this is like chameleon, people pleasing, all that stuff. And the third is firing away. If I'm shooting at you, you're too busy defending yourself to see the cracks in my facade.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we can start to recognize that those are the patterns and we see how they show up in different ways, now we start to see, okay, what was the story that caused that pattern to show up?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like, it always, the source of all of it is I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
When I believe I'm not good enough, I am going to protect myself by shifting and moving and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to me then in order to say, let's overcome this. Let me help you overcome this feeling. How would you say that? Because I know everybody listening has felt this way or is feeling this way.
Yeah.
Or eventually will feel if you haven't felt it.
Mm-hmm.
Which you probably have and you just don't know it.
If you haven't felt it, it means you're not feeling, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the core of the human psyche and experience is that somewhere deep down, we all believe we're not good enough, or not enough.
Not enough.
And what I would say is, and this is why I start with awareness. When we can look at that belief, we are no longer looking through it.
Mm.
So it's like, if you imagine, when you have glasses on, for instance, sunglasses or whatever, if you're looking through the glasses, you may not necessarily see the fingerprints. If you take the glasses off, then all of a sudden you can see where, like, how dirty those glasses actually were. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that, they might have actually been obscuring your vision. Mm-hmm. So the same is true with these limiting beliefs. I call them fear veils. They're so close to our eyes, we literally can't see them. We see through them. So as soon as we're able to step back and see the fear veil, see the belief, then we're at choice. Mm-hmm. We're no longer reacting to it. We're acting from a place of intention, even when it's there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's where the whole being able to have fear without fear having you.
Yes. And then you might have said this before, but I'm going to repeat this. When you say act with intention, what would you recommend? Like, what are some ways to act with intention?
Well, I mean, act from intention is like act from a place that feels really true and feels really genuine for you. And, I don't use the word authentic since that's like using the definition or using the word to define the word. But so for instance, if you allowed yourself to believe that story that you were telling yourself about, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough lawyer.
Right.
What would your reactive pattern, what is your sort of default reactive pattern of those three I mentioned? Or maybe it's something else.
I don't know, actually. I mean, I know I don't fire. I'm actually a very, like, I do a lot of self-inspection all the time. So I'm very aware of it. And I actually pause a lot before I react. There's certain things.
So you're already doing it.
I am. But I mean, I was a great example of not doing it before we started this podcast. And I'll admit to that. The reason is because there's certain things that really trigger me where I go haywire, and that's tech. Tech is literally one of those things for me. And when it comes in the way of, and it's totally like out of my control when it happens also. But when it happens, I feel like I can't control it and I don't know how to fix it, that I start getting flustered. And I think that's maybe my reaction is the dance that you're talking about. Like, I'll do some whatever, right? Like, it's just dancing, not really dancing, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I
doing all this other crazy stuff.
Doing things. Yes,
doing things that don't matter.
Yes. If I keep your attention over here, you're only going to notice the cracks over here.
Or if I talk a lot about something, that doesn't, It's just what is that word? It's just
Deflection?
not deflection. Well, deflection I think would be the third one, where you're just blaming somebody
Oh,
else for something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's good.
Distraction. I guess it is
Yeah.
distraction. Like I'm talking to distract that
Yeah.
situation. And so I think that would be my go-to when it comes to things that I can't, like, for that moment. But normally though, I do pause. I pause a lot. I pause before I move forward, especially when I'm in a situation where I'm not happy and I feel like it's not going the right way. I definitely pause and I'm intentional about my next step. So.
Okay. So what would be an intentional next step for you then?
So depending on what it is, if it's something, if it is with somebody and I don't necessarily like the way they have done something, their action or the way they've spoken or whatever, I've started doing, or I've not started, but I have been doing this for a while, because I want to give positivity out, even in a situation where I'm not 100% happy, but I want to give it in such a way where I'm encouraging the other person to also neutralize them and their anger. So what I do then is I'll say something in a way that is positive, but yet I'm firm on my position, but at the same time, I'm complimenting them on who they are, what they're doing. So they're not feeling as if I'm their enemy, or I'm somebody that's like wanting to combat them. I want to come to a solution together. So let's work on this together. We may not be best of friends, but we can definitely work on this together.
Well, I feel like you just answered the question that you asked me. And I think that's so wonderful, because it's like, what really honors the situation, the person, the need here. And because again, most of the time, like, I'm making something up here. So forgive me if this isn't true for you, but most of us, like, if we don't like that somebody's angry, we do one of those three other things. We either like try to make them like us. That's usually what I tend to do. Or we shut down, or we start like kind of firing back. And any of them are engaging with that fear. And so as soon as fear engages with fear, we're not going to get to a positive place. So we do have to get to that place. We have to, again, bring awareness that like, oh, there's a fear story happening here, and I can't control the other person, but I can control myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we allow ourselves to recognize like, okay, so I'm sort of being triggered here. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to react to it in the sort of less serving way? Or do I want to choose something more intentional and mindful and that serves? And that's really all Act with Intention is.
Yeah.
Because when we're, again, bringing true choice to the matter, that's authenticity. Again, that's us being at choice. But most of the time, we're not at choice. We're not choosing, because we're reacting.
We're reacting. I get it. I absolutely get it right now. I love it. It's so great. Yeah. And another reason why I probably pause also is because again, going back to like the true self of me, I don't want to reduce myself to a place where I'm not okay with in my personality, in my, like, I don't want to bring out the ugly for no reason. There's no reason for that. And then when, what I mean? Like, it's twofold. One is I want to make sure that I don't want to bring negativity into me, but I also don't want to dole it out to somebody. But in order for me not to dole it out to someone, I have to make sure I'm not possessing it. Right? Does that make sense in the sense?
Absolutely.
So that's why I try to neutralize as much as I can, and I pause before I move forward on my next step. But
well, and what I love about what you're saying, and this is something that's so powerful, and it's clear that you're doing so much self-work or inner work, self-development. Yeah. And I make this up, so again, forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but what it sounds like you're saying, and what's really true, is that it's about allowing ourselves to process our emotions, process our feelings. Yeah. And again, like, most of us don't do that because we're so scared of losing control. And the thing is, when we don't allow ourselves to process our emotions, we have no control over them. They're controlling us because they seep out. They get to a place that's like that pressure cooker, and they spill out of us. We as human beings have only about 5% conscious thoughts, feelings, and actions. 95% of everything that we think and do is unconscious. So if we have unprocessed emotions, it is absolutely showing up in ways that we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge with that, in addition to the fact that, like, you know, it can manifest itself in physical disease and all the other stuff, is that when our actions and so all those unconscious things that we're doing disagree with the spoken words that we're using, as human beings, we are able to pick up on that. And we will always believe the actions and what we see over what we hear. It causes us to not trust people. So if you're inauthentic, if you aren't actually aligned inside yourself, we automatically pick up on that. We may not necessarily be able to say what it is, but from an intuitive level, we know that that's somebody we can't trust. Mm-hmm. And so authenticity is actually, from a research perspective, one of the 3 pillars of trust. And trust is one of the most important parts of engagement and productivity and basically all the good things in the world. Connection, intimacy, like keep going. Anyway, any good thing you want, trust is at the heart of it. Wow. And so if authenticity is at the heart of trust, then it's a pretty important priority.
And do you know what the other 2 pillars are of trust?
Empathy and logic.
Okay.
So this is Frances Frey. She's a Harvard professor. She's a PhD in business something, I think. But anyway, so her research shows that, the 3 pillars of trust are empathy, logic, and authenticity. So logic is, can I sort of like understand how you got to this place? Mm-hmm. Empathy is, do you care about me? And authenticity is, can I believe you? Are you in alignment with what you say and what you do? Mm-hmm. And can I, am I picking up on that you are who you say you are? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And you actually did something at Harvard, right? I think I was reading that you were.
Well, I studied there. Yeah.
You studied there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so my core strength, like when I take strength finders, is learner. And so I'm constantly seeking to learn new information. And so I studied under one of the Harvard professors there who developed one of the most significant theories of adult development and how to help people identify the challenges that are standing in their way.
That's just fascinating. Everything you have said today has been fascinating. I have learned so much, and I loved going through this little coaching with you. I mean, I feel like I just had a mini coaching session with you, and I love it. I know everybody listening today is going to just eat it all up. And I mean, you shared so much insight today about authenticity. And I truly appreciate that you had such a beautiful way of defining it also and explaining it, because it's really a buzzword. And sometimes people just don't know what it means. And it's so nice to be able to actually get some more insight into what it truly means, being the author of your life, having control of your choices. I love that. It's just totally resonated with me so much. And I can actually, I think, keep talking to you for like a really long time. I just have to redo this again. This is amazing. And I know you said you have a book coming out, or you're writing a book at the time right now. What's going on with that?
Yeah, yes. And it is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I've done some actually kind of hard things. So this is very difficult for me. And yes, right now the title is Undone. And it is in part about my stories, but using my stories as a way to help people identify truths within themselves, and so that they can live into more full range.
I love that. And so you're currently writing that right now?
So it's done. So
it's done. Okay, we're done.
This is where we go from the value of, so one of my highest values is progress or growth.
Right.
And over-indexed, that turns into perfectionism. So I'm sort of towing the line between progressing and perfectionism. And so the book in its original form is done. And now I'm going back and trying to make it better.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be waiting for it to come out. I will be looking for that. And so before we say bye and wrap this all up, I just do also want to know some fun facts about you. And
okay.
So, wait, I totally forgot, because we got so engrossed in everything. This is Law Chat. And so we do talk a little bit about the law here.
Oh, by the way.
I mean, in your journey, in your personal, in your business that you have, is there anything that you're like, gosh, I really wish I knew that beforehand in, retrospect, or is there something you did proactively?
Specific to law? Because there's so
Yeah,
many things I
specific
wish
to
I
law.
knew.
Specific to law.
Okay.
Specific to law, of course. Like, you can have a whole litany of things.
Yeah. So knock on wood, this isn't wood, so wherever wood is, I have actually been very lucky from a legal standpoint that even like going through my divorce, I only engaged a lawyer basically just to review the contracts and make sure that I was going to be okay.
Right.
And in my business, so there's so much like, so for your audience who happens to serve small businesses, I literally had no idea how hard it was to own a business. I really thought that this was going to be easy. It is very difficult. And so there's a lot that I don't know. Thankfully, I haven't had any issues where I have had to eat my money or my words yet. But yes, there's a lot of things that I don't know related to setting up business and contracts and protecting myself and assets and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's a lot. I think when somebody starts a business, entrepreneurs in general, like we're just so excited to start that we don't think about all the little minute details that just might be really important actually, like the foundation of your business. And so later, I'm so happy you've not had any issues, but a lot of times that's when people learn. Again, being proactive is so much better rather than being reactive.
Yeah, in this case, I feel like it's like a different reactive, but yes, I totally agree.
When you're reacting, you're like haphazard.
Well, right. And actually it's a good point because that's such a good, almost sort of like, what's the word? Zoom out.
Zooming
of what
out.
we were just talking about. Yeah. Because it is when you're reacting, like all of a sudden it's like, am I making the best decision? Like, no, I got to do this fast. I'm under, the gun or whatever. And that's true for us all the time because we're reacting to the stories we're telling ourselves or to whatever the legal pressures are. So yes, I will say though, most of the people I'm talking to are in that place of, can I afford to go do the brave thing that I really want to do? Can I afford to like leave my career in order to go, build a business or become an entrepreneur? And what I would say is when it's something that you really want to do, all the how stuff, like those, foundational elements, like they'll fall into place.
Right.
Even if it's reactive, like don't let those things be the things that stop you from going and making your dream a reality.
Right. I 100% agree with that. 100%. I am optimistic to a fault and I will just believe you can do anything ever. Just, you have to put your mind to it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Make that first step. So
optimism is one of those things. It's funny you say that because same here. And what I realize is that one of my gifts is that I see the good in things in situations or in people. On the bad side, I date a lot of really crappy people. So it works really well in business, not so great in my personal life.
Well, on that note, so tell us, what is your what is your favorite book or books? Personal, or it could be just fun fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter.
So so my favorite book is mine. No, I'm just kidding. I actually kind of hate my book right now, but it's going to be great.
I'm sure it's not as bad as you think it is.
No, it's actually pretty okay, but none of your audience is ever going to read my book.
No, they will. I will.
So the book that changed my life is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That was the first book I read after my daughter's hospital experience, and it totally shifted my perspective and how I showed up in the world. So that would probably be my favorite book. On a fiction side, this isn't necessarily like a favorite, but I just finished reading Daisy Jones and the Six. Have you read that?
No. Daisy Jones?
Daisy Jones and the Six. And I had no idea what it was. I happened to put on Facebook, like, hey, does anybody have books they recommend? And several people said this book. I started reading the book and I was like, why is everybody recommending this book of interviews? And it's about a band. And it's literally told as though it's interviewing like 6 people from the band. I got to page 100 and I finally was like, I'm going to look these people up. Like, who is Daisy Jones? Mm-hmm. The whole thing, it's a fictional book. It's written so well. I had no idea it was a fictional book. These are fictional characters and fictional interviews. It is a fabulous book. I have not ever read something that's like that. It's amazing and super interesting to see how she did it.
Thanks for the recommendation. I love that. I love reading. So I love
Mhm.
collecting. And then I'm like, my pile's this high. Like, I'm getting there.
Same.
Last question is, what anchors you when you feel just really down there and you're just like, man, I just can't. I don't feel like doing this anymore. What anchors you?
So it's really interesting. I think of it as what calls me forth as opposed to what anchors me.
Okay.
Because I feel like my fears are what anchor me, they keep me stuck. And I see that for you, it's like what tethers you. So for me, there are two things. One, again, like I said earlier, my value of progress or growth is the thing that always calls me forth.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also my mission that I'm out there to make the world better, kinder, more joyful by helping people change their lives and live into more full range. And so if I can do that and so the other thing that's part of that is the way for me to do that is by sharing my gifts to have the greatest good and with the greatest number for the greatest good. So I can't allow myself to sit in my fear. Like, I can't do my best work if I'm sitting in fear. I cannot serve my mission if I'm sitting in fear. So that calls me forth.
I love that. I can't serve my mission if I'm living in fear. That's really powerful words and things to think about. And also to remember when, we are fearful of taking that first step. So how does anyone connect with you? How can we get consultation from you or be a part of your program or just learn more, advice and wisdom from you?
If your audience would like to go deeper with me, and I would love for them to, you can visit my website at erikagerdes.com, and hopefully you'll be able to put the spelling in the show notes. And you can also find me on social media. I'm relatively active there, mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Awesome. And your Instagram handle and LinkedIn handle are?
My name, Erika Gerdes. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, everything will be in the show notes also. But just in case if someone is just like, I got to put this up right now. So
yes, absolutely. And on my website, I have a lot of blogs and information, and I'm sharing things regularly. If you get onto my newsletter, then I send regular, insightful thoughts that I'm having and discussions that I'm having with people that I think can serve. My goal, like I said, is to serve with everything I do.
Well, I've gone on your website and I've seen some really interesting things to download and to also learn, very helpful as well. So I'm sure everyone's going to really enjoy exploring your website as well. Thank you so much for being with us today. I have learned tremendous amounts of knowledge today, and I just had such a fun time talking to you also. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. It was my pleasure. And thank you very much for having me. This was a delightful and fun conversation.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Gerda. I love these kind of stories and conversations where we can be real, honest, and open, and having fun at the same time. I hope you are inspired and motivated to keep doing the amazing work you are doing. If this is something that gave you all those feels and then some, truly motivated and inspired for you, you can show your love in all or one of these ways. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with your community and tell them about it, or share with somebody that can benefit from it. I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Law Chat, and until then, keep moving forward. Bye.